Hey guys, tonight we journey into the long, chilly corridors of Topkapi Palace. The air is thick with the smell of wood smoke and wet stone. Frost rims the window lattices, the kind made of stained glass and mother of pearl inlay. Your bare feet touch the cold marble floor as you shuffle in embroidered slippers, clutching a tasseled blanket tight around your shoulders. Somewhere deeper in the palace, a page boy sneezes, and the sound echoes like a signal winter has arrived in Istanbul. The hearths are lit, but they barely warm the immense rooms. The palace is drafty, designed more for grandeur than comfort. You walk slowly past velvet curtains that stir with every gust and tapestries that do little to keep out the chill. Outside, the Bosphorus glints like a blade cutting through the heart of the capital. Inside, courtiers are already beginning to whisper about sore throats, feverish foreheads, and the awful possibility that the Sultan himself might be catching cold. You probably wouldn't survive doing this back in the day, not without layers of wolluck and a strong immune system passed down from your goat-herding ancestors. There were no antibiotics, no cough drops, and certainly no central heating. Getting sick in the winter was just part of the rhythm of life. Everyone expected it. The goal wasn't always to cure the illness, it was to live with it, soothe it, outlast it. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your part of the world. And if your day was full of deadlines and noise, take this time to forget it all. Let your mind wander, float, and dream a little. This story isn't urgent, it's just here for you to enjoy and rest alongside. May your sleep be deep and your dreams be lovely. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're a member of the imperial household now, just close enough to power that you sleep indoors, but far enough that you still have to do your own laundry. You've been assigned to the winter wing, an older part of the palace, where thick walls keep out the wind, but also block the sunlight. Here, sickness blooms in the dark corners and drifts through the halls like incense smoke. It's not enough to knock anyone flat, not yet. Just a cough here, a fevered whisper there, a nervous glance over a shoulder when someone clears their throat a little too loudly. Your job to fetch the morning firewood and warm bricks to slip beneath the Sultan's bedding. The bricks are heated in the kitchen ovens, and then wrapped in cloth. It's believed that a warm foot is a healthy foot. You deliver them to the sleeping chambers just before dawn, when the world is still blue with frost and silence. This morning, you pause outside the chamber of the chief consort. You hear a dry, barking cough from within. A servant opens the door, a crack leans out and whispers urgently, "For Surgan Elmasu, the banishment apple." It's a type of quince, boiled with sugar and rosewater, believed to calm the throat and sweeten the breath. You make a mental note to tell the kitchen boys. As you descend the staircase, careful not to trip on your robe, you overhear two eunuchs murmuring about remedies. One mentions ambergris mixed with warm milk. The other scoffs, insisting on clove oil with mint. Historians still argue whether clove or cardamom was more commonly used, he says smugly, quoting a physician from the palace library. You roll your eyes. You just want to warm your hands. Down in the kitchens, things are already busy. The chefs are preparing spiced rice, thick goat's milk yogurt, and something bubbling in a cauldron that smells suspiciously like onions and vinegar. You help grind cinnamon bark with a mortar and pestle the same spice that's rumored to be slipped into cough remedies in the Sultan's nightly pudding. One of the older cooks leans in his breath, fogging the air. When I was your age, he rasps, we used to keep camphor balls in our sleeves. Smelled awful, but it kept the lungs warm. He presses a little cloth pouch into your hand camphor, in time tied with a strand of horsehair. You thank him, tuck it into your belt, and try not to breathe too deeply. By the time you return upstairs, the sun has risen a little, a dim light filtered through clouds and centuries-old glass. You pass a small room where one of the scribe apprentices is coughing into his sleeve. His ink has smeared across the parchment, blotting the words. You glance at the title, a treatise on the medicinal benefits of figs. You stifle a laugh. Maybe he should read more closely. In the harem wing, the women are seated on cushions, sipping something warm from tiny cups. It smells like boiled pear and something earthy. A healer is explaining that it's tamarind tonic, good for the throat, better for the temperament. She eyes you suspiciously and offers you a sip. You pretend to drink and smile politely. It tastes like fermented molasses and despair. Finally, you return to your corner of the palace. Your own bed is piled with blankets and a sheepskin mat. You stretch your limbs, already aching from the cold, and pull the covers over your head, but not before tucking that camphor pouch under your pillow, just in case. Outside, the wind howls across the domes and courtyards. Inside, the fire crackles low. Somewhere down the corridor, someone coughs again. You close your eyes and try not to think about it. After all, it's just winter in Istanbul. You wake to the sound of footsteps, soft and slippered, pacing down the marble hall. A heavy curtain sways near the door, and through it comes the faint smell of something floral and oddly sharp, like roses dipped in vinegar. You sit up slowly, the cold biting your shoulders as the blanket slips down. Across the room, someone has left a bundle of folded clothes, deep blue silk, embroidered in gold, stitched with tiny tulip motifs. You recognize them immediately, the Sultan's winter sleepwear. That's your task today, to deliver it freshly aired and warmed by the brazier. It's far too fine to touch with bare hands, so you use a cloth to carry it. Even so, you can't help but admire the work. The fabric seems to shimmer like running water, and the tiny fastenings are made of carved bone and ivory. These aren't just pajamas. They're royal declarations in thread. You walk carefully passing silent guards with scimitars at their hips and boredom in their eyes. Inside the Sultan's private quarters, the room is dim and heavy with scent. One corner houses an incense stand, its brass dome steaming with frankincense and myrrh. A eunuch nods at you, points to the bed, then gestures for you to leave without speaking. The Sultan is resting the eunuch mouths, still fevered. You step back, bow slightly, and head toward the outer chamber. The rumor is that the Sultan hasn't slept well in 3 nights. Some say he was exposed to the cold winds during his morning prayer walk. Others whisper that he's simply melancholic, weighed down by dreams of failed campaigns and the memory of a favorite falcon that died last spring. Regardless of the cause, the cure as always begins with fabric. The Ottomans understood sleep as something sacred, almost medicinal, and so what you wore to sleep mattered deeply. Cotton, while widely used, was considered too plain for royal wear. Wool too scratchy. Silk that was the proper choice, especially silk lined with ermine fur or trimmed with fox. A warm chest made a clear throat, according to one of the royal physicians, who also advocated for wrapping the ankles in velvet before bed. The palace seamstresses worked tirelessly through the colder months, repairing worn hems and replacing buttons with jeweled toggles. Sometimes garments were stitched with protective verses from the Quran not to be seen, only felt. These hidden charms were meant to shield the wearer from nightmares' coughs and the cold fingers of death that often slipped in through the window cracks during long Ottoman winters. You return to your own small chamber, rubbing your arms briskly. Your clothes are not silk. They are not even new. You're wearing a patched tunic and trousers with cuffs that have been re-hemmed too many times. But tonight, you've been promised a rare gift, an old pair of the Sultan's discarded sleep socks, too worn for royalty, but perfect for a cold servant's toes. When you finally hold them, they feel like treasure, light warm and impossibly soft. You pull them on and immediately feel your spirits lift. You lie down again, this time facing the window, and gaze at the pale light filtering through the lattice. For a moment, you allow yourself to imagine that you're someone else, someone powerful, someone draped in fox fur robes attended to by silent staff. But then a sharp whistle calls from the courtyard below, a summons to help carry firewood. Reality returns like a wet blanket. You sigh, swing your legs over the side of the bed, and begin your work again. As you descend the staircase, a woman brushes past you, her arms full of folded linen. She nods, and you catch a glimpse of her basket. It holds what looks like sachets of lavender, dried rose petals, and something darker cloves, maybe. These are for the sleeping chambers, she explains quietly. Fragrance is health. Smell too much rot, and you'll rot from within. Indeed, the Ottomans believed that fragrance could be both shield and sword against winter sickness. You pass rooms where incense smolders gently in ceramic dishes, and one hallway where tiny bags of herbs are hung near every doorframe. In one quiet nook of the palace, there's a room filled entirely with perfumes, bottles shaped like pears and tulips, liquids colored like rubies and gold. The court's perfumers, dressed in blue robes and soft gloves, spend their days blending oils and boiling petals. Their recipes are secret. Their clients, everyone from the Sultan to the soup tasters, you're told to deliver a vial of something special rosewater infused with crushed pearl and a rare resin from Arabia. It's to be sprinkled on the Sultan's pillow before sleep. It calms the chest, the perfumer says with a bow, and stirs sweet dreams. You hold the bottle gently, as if it might evaporate with a single jolt. As you walk the palace halls, a soft chill moves through your lungs, and you cough once, not loudly, but enough that two passing scribes glance over nervously. You shrug and keep walking. Later that evening, the blankets are turned down. The charcoal is replaced in the brazier, and the servants whisper about who's coughing now. A vizier's wife, perhaps, or a favored musician. You aren't sure. All you know is that the slippers you've just placed near your bed were dusted with a strange powdered ginger and turmeric you think mixed with pine ash. It's said to ward off chills. You lie down once more, the soft sultan socks warming your feet, and draw the blanket up to your chin. Outside, the night deepens. The stars peer in through the window slats. You think of silk and of rosewater and of how even a king can't sleep when his lungs rattle. You close your eyes and try not to cough. It's early again before even the rooster crows and you're already up. The air in your chamber is so cold that your breath clouds in front of your face. You sit up slowly, still wrapped in dreams of rosewater and quiet music. But a new scent pulls you from sleep, sharp, sweet, and somehow medicinal. You follow your nose down the corridor, past shuttered rooms and creaking doors, until you reach a chamber near the kitchens. The door is slightly open. Inside, a man in a green robe is standing over a bowl, his fingers stained dark from crushed herbs. A brazier glows nearby, heating something in a copper dish. You lean in. The scent is overpowering cloves orange peel and maybe something smoky like cedar or dried fig skin. You found the perfumer again, but today he's not mixing fragrances for pleasure. Today he's preparing a prescription. He notices you. "Ah," he says softly. "You smell that? That's medicine for the nose." You step inside, curious. On the shelves behind him are dozens of tiny pots and vials, each one labeled in elegant Arabic script and sealed with wax or thread. He holds one up a tiny ball of waxy cloth soaked in something dark. This, he says with pride, is musk and myrrh. You tuck it into your nostril when you go out. Keeps the sickness away. You try not to wince. In your nose, he laughs. Where else the Ottoman nose must be clever. It's the first line of defense. You learn to your surprise that the court takes the sense of smell very seriously, especially in winter. The nose was more than just a sensory tool. It was seen as a kind of early warning system, a delicate guardian against disease. If something smelled bad, it was dangerous. If it smelled sweet, it might heal. The royal physicians even wrote treatises on it. They believed that illness could ride on the back of foul air, slipping through the nostrils and into the lungs like an invisible thief. Their solution: overwhelm it with stronger, cleaner scents. Stuff your pockets with clove buds. Dab rose oil behind your ears. Hold a sachet of crushed mint under your nose whenever someone nearby coughed. Historians still argue whether this actually worked, the perfumer admits, but in those days believing was part of the cure. He hands you a small cloth pouch, lavender mint, and dried orange peel. "Keep this with you," he says. "Breathe it in every hour, and don't let the air near you go stale." You thank him, tucking the sachet into your belt, and continue on your way. The halls are waking up now. You pass servants brushing the floor with bundled twigs, and a cook hauling onions in a net bag. The coughing seems worse today. Not loud, not panicked, just more frequent, dry, repetitive, like the whole palace is subtly out of tune. Near the baths you stop. There's a girl your age pressing cloves into a pomander, a small, hollowed orange studded with spice. She rolls it between her palms and offers you one silently. You accept it. It smells like something ancient and oddly hopeful. The pomander was a popular remedy, she explains. You tie it to your belt or hang it from your bedpost. Some even press them to their mouths when others sneeze. Further down the hall, you meet a woman carrying what looks like a decorative fan. But as she opens it, you realize it's not for show. It's a personal scent screen, perfumed with oils and made of thin fabric. She uses it to filter the air she breathes. She claims it was gifted by the Valide Sultan, the Queen Mother during the last winter plague. You believe her? It's stitched with silver thread and smells like sandalwood. Even in the palace baths, the nose takes precedence. The steam is thick with eucalyptus rosemary and pine resin. You close your eyes and breathe deeply. The steam curls around your face, warming your cheeks and loosening something tight in your chest. An old man near the fountain tells you the secret to a healthy winter is hot water, hot tea, and hotter scents. You soak in the steam a little longer, then return to your duties. Your fingers smell like herbs and oranges. Your robes hold the scent of wood smoke and cloves. You feel strangely fortified, as if every breath you've taken today has stitched another layer of armor inside your chest. Before dinner, you're summoned to help prepare the evening chamber for one of the royal daughters. You enter quietly, setting down warmed stones wrapped in cloth and lighting a tiny lamp filled with jasmine oil. As you do, you notice a bowl of dried petals beside her bed. She uses them, you're told, as a kind of dream medicine, breathing in the scent as she sleeps, hoping to chase away bad dreams and sickly airs. And there beside the bowl is something you hadn't seen before, a tiny book, handwritten, filled with scent recipes. You glance quickly, some are for coughs, some for fevers, some simply to make a person smile. One entry reads, "To ease the breath and gladden the mind, mix lemon balm with clove and place near the heart before sleep." You smile, close the book, and leave the room gently, your pomander still warm in your hand. Tonight you lie in bed with the scent of all these things, cloves, oranges, pine, jasmine, dancing faintly in the air. Outside the city of Istanbul is quiet save for a distant dog barking. Somewhere someone is sneezing, but in your room it smells like safety. You wake before the dawn, bell lungs heavy, but not yet wheezing, the chill already seeping through the stone walls like a silent tide. You know what day it is. It's the day of the bath, not just for you, but for many of the palace staff. Winter bathing isn't a luxury here. It's a prescription, a ritual, and if the court physicians are to be believed, it's the most important cure of them all. You wrap yourself tightly in a woven cotton towel and slip into your softest slippers. The hallways are dim, flickering with low oil lamps. As you make your way toward the hammam, the Ottoman bathhouse, you pass others doing the same. Everyone moves slowly, sleepily, like ghosts wrapped in cloth. The marble beneath your feet is cold until you reach the inner chamber where warm mist greets you like a friend. The heat is thick and wet, rising from beneath the floor. As you step through the door, you're wrapped in vapor and silence. The hammam smells of lemon rind, old stone, and the faint sweetness of eucalyptus, leaves floating in the water. You sit near the edge of a sunken basin while an older attendant pours warm water over your shoulders with a copper ladle. It's oddly comforting. The bathhouse is hushed the way a temple might be before prayer. People speak in whispers, or not at all. Everyone here knows a winter cough ignored could become something worse. But a winter cough treated with heat, herbs, and patience that might be soothed even if not fully cured. The Ottomans believed deeply in the healing power of steam. You begin to sweat not from effort, but simply from being. The air around you pulses with warmth, and your skin drinks in the moisture. A man beside you coughs once, but quietly. Then he holds a small bundle of herbs under his nose, thyme perhaps or sage, and breathes in deeply. The bath attendant offers you a similar bundle wrapped in muslin cloth. You press it to your face and inhale. It smells like an entire hillside in spring earthy green sharp. The vapor seems to sneak into your chest and loosen something that's been hiding there. You cough just once and it feels clean. In another corner of the hammam, a woman is being rubbed down with olive oil and crushed mustard seeds. It's said to warm the joints and open the lungs. Across from her, two boys are grinding dried flowers into a powder to be added to the bathwater rose chamomile and something blue you don't recognize. They say it calms the blood. You believe them. You move slowly toward the hottest chamber, where steam is so dense it clings to your eyelashes. You find a place to sit on the heated stone slab. Here you close your eyes, and for a moment you are nowhere. You are floating in warm fog, surrounded by soft echoes, a splash, a whisper, a slow exhale. Someone beside you murmurs a bit of poetry. You barely catch the words, but it sounds like steam rises like prayers, and the body answers with silence. You smile. Even now, poetry clings to everything in this empire, especially healing. The physicians may prescribe herbs and warmth, but they also write verses and record dreams. In fact, there's an old belief that the bathhouse is the best place for dreaming. The combination of heat water and slow breath lulls the mind into a state where visions can visit, and as you lie there, your own mind drifts. You think of past winters, of elders who swore by strange treatments, rubbing garlic on the soles of the feet, sleeping with onions by the bedside, drinking vinegar mixed with honey and crushed peppercorns. Some of them worked, some were simply rituals, but they gave people a sense of doing something, of not surrendering to the cold and the cough. You remember your grandmother's voice telling you to wash behind the ears and never go to bed with wet hair. She believed the wind itself carried illness and that only steam could chase it away. Back in the present, you hear a distant sound, a gong signaling the end of the morning bath. Slowly, people begin to rise. You follow towel-wrapped and slow-moving your body soft and pink from the heat. As you step into the cooler chamber to dry off, you're handed a small cup of warm sherbet, a fruit infusion sour and sweet. It shocks your tongue, but clears your throat. Before you leave, one of the bath attendants presses a small ball of beeswax into your palm. "Rub this on your chest before sleep," she says gently. "It holds the warmth. Outside, the cold hits you like a slap, but it doesn't sink in the way it did earlier. You're holding a pocket of heat inside you now, a borrowed fire. And as you walk back to your chamber, past coughing scribes and sniffling cooks, you feel oddly protected. At your door, you pause. The stone floor is cold again. The steam has already begun to leave your skin, but your breath feels easier. Your chest is looser. You lie down and tuck yourself in, still wearing the faint scent of thyme and stone and soap. Somewhere nearby, someone is coughing, but not you, not tonight. You've just finished folding the morning laundry soft robes, scratchy towels, and the occasional pair of embroidered socks when a runner from the medical wing finds you. He's out of breath and holding a note written on heavy parchment. You read it quickly. The Sultan's court physician requests your assistance. You blink. You're not sick, at least not that you know of. You're just a servant with cold fingers and a tendency to eavesdrop. But when the doctor calls, you go. You find him in a sunlit room, filled with books and glass bottles. Scrolls are stacked like firewood, and a long table is scattered with dried herbs, quills, and copper bowls. The physician is a thin man with a neatly trimmed beard and a voice that sounds like it's always about to recite something important, which it turns out is exactly what he does. He doesn't greet you with a question. He begins with a couplet. If breath is tight and chest is sore, the fig and milk will health restore. You wait for him to continue, but he only smiles. Do you understand? He asks. You pause. You want me to bring figs and milk? He nods approvingly. Yes. Warmed gently and mixed with a pinch of crushed coriander seed. He turns back to his scroll. The Sultan coughed twice during prayer. It may be nothing, it may be the wind, but the body listens when poetry leads. This is your introduction to a peculiar truth of Ottoman medicine. Many court physicians were also poets. It wasn't simply tolerated, it was encouraged. A good doctor, after all, needed precision rhythm memory. A good poet needed the same. So the two arts blended, and the best prescriptions rhymed. You're sent to fetch ingredients from the apothecary wing. There you find jars of licorice root, bundles of anise coils, of dried orange peel. You pass a boy grinding something in a mortar, his hands stained yellow from turmeric. For the throat, he tells you with a grin. And the mind, if you believe the old books, the apothecary himself hands you a packet of ground fig and dates. Softens the lungs, he mutters. Tastes terrible. The trick is to mix it with a rhyme. You return to the physician, who is now deep in dictation. He's composing a medicinal poem for the Valid Sultan's cousin, who suffers from nighttime coughs and vivid dreams. As he stirs your fig milk mixture, he murmurs more lines. Let night be long and lungs be light. May dreams be sweet and breathing right. He hands you the cup, nodding toward the sleeping chamber. Deliver this warm, with care. You walk slowly, the ceramic vessel hot in your hands. As you do, you reflect on the curious logic of the palace. If something is made beautiful, it might also become more powerful. If a cure is wrapped in rhyme, maybe it goes down easier. Maybe the mind believes in it more fully. You reach the Sultan's chamber just as the eunuch opens the door. Inside, the ruler is resting surrounded by cushions and tapestries. His face is pale, his expression unreadable. You bow hand over the cup and back away. The door closes softly. Later that day, back in the physician's study, he invites you to sit for a moment. You're not used to this. You perch at the edge of a stool while he flips through a leather-bound notebook. Historians still argue whether Ottoman medicine truly differed from that of the Persians or Arabs he muses, but here we believed more deeply in the poetry of the body. That balance of heat and cold, wet, and dry was as much about the soul as the stomach. He looks at you. Do you ever write poetry? You shake your head. Only laundry lists. He chuckles. That's a start. Everything begins with naming. As he speaks, an assistant brings in a tray of pastes and powders. One jar contains crushed poppy seed mixed with honey, a remedy for dry coughing. Another holds ground fennel and sugar, which is said to soften the throat. These are for the concubines, the physician says quietly. Too many are coughing. Perhaps they've shared scarves again. Or perhaps the palace is just too full of stories. You help him label the jars, each one with both the name of the remedy and a small verse. One reads, "Let sugar kiss the bitter root and make the silent song reboot." You're not sure it makes sense, but it feels gentle, like medicine for both the throat and the heart. That evening before bed, you slip by the medical wing one last time. The physician is standing by the window, looking out into the garden where bare fig trees rattle softly in the wind. He doesn't notice you. You leave him a note folded carefully. On it, you've written your first couplet. Though lungs may ache and nights grow long, a servant's breath still hums a song. You don't sign it, but you leave it on his desk, tucked beneath the edge of his spice tray. Back in your room, you settle beneath your blanket. Your lungs still a little scratchy, but your heart warm. Somewhere in the palace, someone is rhyming another cure. You wake to a strange sensation, a tingling in your toes, as if your feet have been whispering secrets to each other all night. You sit up slowly, rub your eyes, and then remember last night, just before you slipped into bed, you tucked something odd into your slippers. It was a mixture wrapped in fabric given to you by a kitchen boy who claimed his grandmother swore by its cinnamon saffron, a pinch of black pepper, and a bit of dried ginger, all ground together and tied up in linen like a tea bag. He'd told you to place it inside your shoes before wearing them to warm the blood from the soles up. You hadn't believed him, but your feet had been cold, and desperation often does the convincing. Now as you stand, you feel it not exactly heat, but something that lingers, a gentle warmth, an almost imperceptible lift in your step. The spices haven't melted or burst, but their scent has seeped through the leather and into your skin. You sniff the slippers before slipping them back on. They smell like a sweet, dusty cupboard in a distant village. You shuffle through the hallway feeling oddly buoyant. Around you, the palace is already stirring. Servants carry bundles of woolen cloaks, scribes deliver notes wrapped in cloth, and somewhere nearby someone is coughing the low, persistent kind that never seems to go away. You duck into a side corridor toward the servants' bath, where warmth still lingers from the morning heat. Inside, an older washerwoman is kneeling beside a pile of garments, sprinkling something into each shoe before stacking them neatly by the door. You watch her for a moment before she speaks without looking up. "Pepper and nutmeg today," she says. "We're out of clove." You step closer. "In the shoes." She nods. "Of course." Keeps the cold from crawling up the bones, and the scent it rises, straight to the chest. You crouch beside her. She hands you a jar. You sniff. The nutmeg is strong, earthy, and oddly calming. You do this every winter. Every winter, she replies, and always before funerals. You blink. Funerals. She shrugs. Cold feet make stiff legs. Stiff legs make slow servants. No one wants that during procession. You help her finish the pile. Together you slip little sachets of spice into dozens of shoes, some fine and embroidered others, rough and cracked. Each one receives the same attention. By the time you're done, the whole corner of the room smells like a spice market. Later that day, you deliver a pair of slippers to a minor vizier's quarters. He invites you in and insists on sharing a strange story. Years ago, he says he was traveling through the Anatolian countryside in winter. One night, his horse collapsed in the snow, and he had to walk 15 miles through a storm. The only thing that kept him going, a pair of boots lined with crushed cinnamon bark, a gift from a shepherd's wife. I didn't cough once, he claims proudly. My legs felt like they belonged to a younger man. You smile politely. Everyone in the palace has a cure and a story to match it. You continue your rounds, and the tales grow stranger. In the women's wing, one of the concubines claims her mother used to sprinkle saffron into her socks every morning before school. To keep the devil out of the blood, she says, eyes twinkling. Another girl says her aunt wore garlic cloves in her boots during winter. She never married, but she never caught a cold either. And then there's the guard outside the treasury door, standing stock still in the snow, who swears that a mixture of dried fig leaf and salt tucked between the heel and the sole will keep the lung shivers at bay for an entire season. He offers to show you, but you decline. By sunset, your feet are tired but still somehow comfortable. You return to your own chamber, peel off your slippers, and check the spice pouch. It's slightly damp from use, but the scent is still strong. You tuck it under your blanket and lie down. You think of the odd wisdom of putting medicine beneath the feet, as if the Ottomans believed that every part of the body, even the most humble, deserved care. You wonder how many other small rituals like this going to be said unrecorded, passed only from hand to hand, generation to generation. Historians still argue whether these practices held real medicinal power, you think to yourself, or whether they simply gave people comfort, a way to feel in control of the uncontrollable. But as your feet grow warm beneath the blanket and the scent of cinnamon rises gently into the air, you realize something important. Comfort is its own kind of medicine. You pull the covers up to your chin, flex your toes, and close your eyes. You're awakened by the clatter of spoons and the unmistakable smell of garlic drifting through the corridor. It's coming from the palace kitchens, of course, where the cooks are already at work stewing, chopping, simmering. But today it smells different, richer, earthier. There's something familiar in it too, the scent of lentils, browned onions, and the kind of spice that coats the back of the throat with warmth. Your stomach growls, and you follow the trail like a cat, padding barefoot toward the warmth. In the kitchen, the fires are roaring, and the air is thick with steam. Copper pots bubble on the hearth, and the chef's assistants move quickly, dodging each other, like dancers. At the center of it all is the head cook, a broad-shouldered man with a peppery beard and an expression of grim focus. He's stirring a pot larger than a bath basin, muttering to himself. You ask what's cooking. He glances up, narrowing his eyes. The vizier's cure, he says. He's coughing again. You ask if he means the Grand Vizier, the Sultan's right hand. He nods. Couldn't speak last night. Voice like a broken reed. He begged for the soup. You blink. The soup? He grunts, then gestures for you to come closer. Not just any soup. The soup. The one that saved him last winter or so, he claims. Lentils, garlic, caramelized onion, a little cumin, a dash of vinegar, and the secret. You lean in. The secret. He grins. A single preserved lemon sliced thin and a whisper of crushed mint. Not stirred, just steeped. The story, he says, goes like this. Last year, during a particularly bitter January, the Grand Vizier had fallen ill. Not deathly ill, not quite, but breathless, hoarse, and unable to rise from bed. The palace physicians prescribed every tincture and tonic they could think of. Perfumes, vapors, poetic rhymes, none of it worked. And then the cook, out of frustration, More than hope made this soup. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't noble. It was peasant food what shepherds made in clay pots, buried beneath coals. But he served it anyway with warm bread and a strong prayer. That night the vizier slept without coughing. The next morning he rose. He even spoke. Since then, every winter this soup has returned, not just for the vizier, but for anyone feeling the weight of the season in their lungs. You're handed a bowl not large but heavy. The steam curls into your nose, and with the first sip, the warmth spreads from your chest to your fingertips. The lentils are soft, the lemon subtle, the mint almost playful. It tastes like something old, like something remembered. You sit on a stool near the hearth, sipping slowly, and listen as the other servants swap stories about soup-based miracles. One says her uncle was saved from a fever by drinking onion broth steeped with dried cherry pits. Another swears that coriander soup cured a child who'd stopped speaking for 3 days. Whether the tales are true or just stories shared to pass the cold hours, no one seems to care. Later, you're asked to carry a tray of the soup up to the vizier's quarters. The bowl is placed in a carved wooden tray beside a small silver spoon and a folded napkin embroidered with a single tulip. As you make your way through the palace, you pass others sipping the same broth, a guard leaning against the wall, a maid sitting cross-legged by a window, even one of the lesser princes hunched over a bowl with steam fogging his spectacles. In the vizier's chamber, the old man is sitting upright, propped by cushions, with a woolen shawl draped around his shoulders. His skin is pale, and his eyes look tired, but he smiles when he sees the bowl. Ah, he rasps, my golden salvation. You hand it over, bow, and step back. He doesn't wait. He dips his spoon and sips as if the act itself is sacred. As you leave, you hear him hum a tune, a soft lullaby, wordless but steady. That night, the kitchen prepares extra batches of the soup. It's said the Sultan himself has requested some. You watch the pot boil and wonder how such a simple thing, lentils and water and garlic, could carry such weight. But maybe that's the point. Historians still argue whether this dish had any real medical value. You remember one of the physicians saying, but what they cannot argue is this food is often the first form of care we're ever given, and the last. In your room, you find that someone has left a small covered bowl by your door, still warm. You lift the lid, lentil soup, the same recipe, no note, just the gift. You sit on your mat, sip slowly, and feel the day's chill finally leave your bones. It starts with a sticky jar. You're organizing the back shelf of the palace storeroom, inventorying jars of preserved lemons, dried apricots, and tiny cloth sacks of sumac when you knock over a squat ceramic vessel sealed with wax. It thuds to the ground but doesn't break. When you lift it, your fingers come away glazed with something dark, glossy, and sweet. You sniff it. The scent is unmistakable figs, sun-warmed and softened into syrup, with a hint of anise and something floral underneath. You turn to the steward, who peers over from the next shelf and raises an eyebrow. Ah, he says, the dream syrup. You wipe your hands on your robe. Dream syrup. He nods, chuckling. Fig syrup. Thick as oil, sweet as sin. They say it cures a cough, calms a throat, and sends you into dreams so deep Your soul forgets it has a body. That sounds like an exaggeration. Then again, so does most of palace life. The jar is carefully resealed and placed in a brass tray for delivery. The steward tells you to bring it to the concubine's wing. Apparently, one of the girls has been coughing so much during song practice that she nearly fainted. The syrup is to be spoon-fed, one mouthful at a time just before bed. You carry it carefully through the twisting hallways, the jar warm from the sun, filtering through the latticework. On the way, you pass a guard who stops you. He sniffs the air, grins. Fig syrup, be careful, he says. You might fall asleep standing up. You smile and move on. At the concubine's quarters, you're met by a handmaiden with a silk scarf covering her nose and mouth. She takes the jar and leads you into a quiet side room where the ailing singer rests. She's young, maybe no older than you, with damp hair and flushed cheeks. Her eyes open when the syrup is uncorked, and she sighs. I remember this, she whispers. Tastes like stories from my childhood. You help the handmaiden spoon a thick mouthful between her lips. She swallows slowly, and a strange expression crosses her face, something between relief and drowsiness. The handmaiden dips another spoonful, and again the girl accepts it. After the third, her eyes begin to flutter closed. She's asleep before the fourth. Later, the handmaiden tells you that fig syrup has long been used in the palace, not just for coughs, but for nerves, insomnia, even heartbreak. It's made by boiling dried figs in rose water and honey, reducing it down over hours until it turns nearly black. Sometimes a drop of opium is added for the most restless patients, though always secretly, and not for servants like you. That evening you return to the storeroom, hoping to steal just a spoonful, but the jar is gone. Still the scent lingers on your fingers, and it makes your chest feel lighter somehow. Maybe it's imagination, maybe not. Historians still argue whether fig syrup truly held curative properties you recall from one of the medical texts you once glimpsed. But there is no argument about this. It made people feel cared for, and sometimes that alone is enough to heal. Before bed, you find a cook in the servants' mess, stirring something in a small pot over the fire. You ask what it is, and he smiles. Poor man's syrup, he says. Figs if we have them, prunes if we don't. A splash of vinegar, a spoon of honey, a little cinnamon. It won't knock you out like the palace version, but it'll make your throat stop barking for the night. He pours a cup for you. The flavor is strange sweet at first, then sharp and earthy, but it warms your chest. Your limbs grow heavy. Your thoughts drift. You climb into bed and pull the covers over you. The scent of figs still clings to your sleeve. You think of that girl, already deep in sleep before the candle burned halfway down. You envy her. Your own dreams come slow and syrupy. You dream of orchards, soft voices, and warm hands offering spoons in the dark. When you wake, you don't cough once. You wake beneath 4 layers of cloth, each one heavier than the last. There's the thin linen sheet, then the wool blanket, then a quilted cotton throw, and finally a thick camel hair coverlet that smells faintly of smoke and old cedar. You don't remember pulling them all up. Maybe someone else did while you were asleep. Maybe the blankets climbed on themselves, like soft beasts with a duty to protect. The room is quiet, and for the first time in days, there's no chill at the end of your nose. You stretch slowly feet, flexing against the warmth, trapped under the covers. Outside your chamber, winter still rules. The stone floor will bite when you step onto it. But in here, you've built a fortress, not with walls, but with fabric. The Ottomans, you've learned, understood the body as a house, and warmth was its roof. To keep illness away, they blanketed themselves in layers not just for comfort, but for protection. Thick quilts, fur-lined robes, woolen caps for sleeping, even indoor mittens. And the beds, they were their own architecture. In the palace's deeper halls, you once glimpsed the sleeping chamber of a senior scribe. His bed was stacked so high with blankets it resembled a pastry layer upon layer, each stitched with different fabrics: Bursa silk, Damascus cotton, Anatolian wool. When he lay down, he sank like a stone tossed into cream. You slide out from beneath your covers and pad toward the corridor, where laundry lines stretch between carved pillars. Today is bedding day, the time when all the palace's quilts are aired, beaten, and relayered. You help another servant haul a bundle of folded blankets to the upper balcony, where the winter sun slants through the arches just enough to warm the cloth without fading the dye. You spread out a deep green quilt, stitched with stars and dust dances in the sunlight. The other servant, an older woman with wind-chapped cheeks, teaches you to check for signs of blanket illness. Too much moisture, she warns, and the cold climbs inside the stitchwork. It sleeps in the corners and wakes up in your chest. She flips a quilt, sniffs it once, and tuts. Damp. That's a wheezer waiting to happen. You nod solemnly, though you're not sure whether the wheezer is real or metaphor. Later, you pass through the women's wing and see one of the concubines embroidering a new blanket cover. Gold thread glints through the deep blue velvet. At its center, a stitched talisman, an 8-pointed star with curling vines and hidden script. You ask if it's for decoration. She smiles gently. It's a protection charm, she whispers, to keep the cough away. There are rumors that some of the royal blankets are stuffed not just with cotton, but with crushed bay leaves, dried sage, or even rose petals. One blanket, used by a favorite of the Sultan, is said to have been lined with thin sheets of pressed amber. Another had tiny silver charms sewn between its layers, words of healing wrapped in silence. Historians still argue whether these additions had any physical effect. You recall reading in the notes of a palace chronicler, but none question the psychological comfort they provided. Comfort, after all, isn't nothing. That evening you return to your own modest bed and perform the ritual you've seen the older servants do. You fluff each layer. You warm a brick in the fire and wrap it in cloth for your feet. You shake out your woolen shawl and lay it across your chest. Then just before you climb under, you whisper a line from a lullaby. One of the kitchen girls sang earlier, "Let the cold stay at the door, blankets wrapped forevermore." You smile at how foolish it sounds, but also at how right it feels. You settle in. The layers press down gently like many hands offering comfort. Outside, the wind howls again. But beneath your blanket fortress, it can't reach you. You don't even mind the heaviness. You welcome it. Tonight your breath catches in your throat. It's nothing alarming, not yet. Just a tickle, a gentle rasp, the kind that makes you swallow twice and hope no one notices. But in the palace, a cough is never just a cough. Not during winter, not when silence is expected and health is a form of loyalty. You slip quietly down to the kitchens after evening prayers. The cook raises an eyebrow when he sees you, but says nothing. You don't speak either. You simply tap your chest, once then point toward the shelves where the tonics are kept. He nods. From behind a curtain, he brings out a small wooden box wrapped in cloth and sealed with red wax. He opens it slowly, revealing 6 tiny jars, each no larger than a thimble. One is filled with a thick amber paste. Another glistens with golden syrup. A third smells faintly of laurel and wine. These, he whispers, are for the upper ranks. But tonight, I didn't see anything. He selects a jar, the one filled with the thickest syrup, and removes the lid. Inside is a deep, amber liquid glinting in the lamplight. It smells like wild honey and something deeper, poppy maybe. He dips in a slender silver spoon, the kind usually reserved for the harem, and offers it to you. You hesitate. You've heard the stories. The honey is wild, collected from Anatolian cliffs, where bees feed on thyme and nettle. The poppy is harvested in secret, mixed with mint or lavender, and stirred by hand under moonlight. 1 drop soothes, 2 drops silence, 3 drops? Well, no one talks about that. You open your mouth, and he places the spoon gently on your tongue. It's sweet at first, too sweet, then bitter, then nothing, and then everything. Your throat warms instantly. The ache eases. A drowsy weight pools behind your eyes. It doesn't feel like sleep, not yet, but like the idea of sleep, as though your body has remembered how to rest, even if your mind hasn't caught up. The cook wipes the spoon and reseals the jar. You'll feel it soon, he murmurs. Just don't take another. You nod and return to your quarters, the warmth trailing behind your ribs like a slow fire. The halls seem longer, quieter. Footsteps echo like whispers. You pass a guard who leans against the wall, eyes half closed with the same syrup glow behind them. In your room, the blanket seems heavier than usual, or maybe your limbs are lighter. You lie down slowly, letting gravity do the work. Your ears ring faintly but not unpleasantly. Your throat no longer scratches. Your breath is deep, slow. As the room begins to tilt just a little, your thoughts wander. You remember hearing that during the reign of Sultan Suleiman, a physician crafted a golden syrup made of honey poppy saffron and ground pearls. It was only given to the sickest of the royal family, and always with a blessing spoken 3 times. The syrup, it was said, brought either healing or perfect sleep. Historians still argue whether those ingredients had real pharmacological effects. One of the scholars once muttered in the library, but no one denies the results. No one ever coughed again. The palace, of course, has always been torn between medicine and magic. The syrup is both. Too sacred to dismiss, too dangerous to embrace fully. You feel a pulse in your temple, slow and deep, like the echo of a distant drum. It isn't unpleasant. It simply reminds you your body is still here. A tiny giggle escapes your lips, surprising you. You remember the cook's words. Just 1 spoonful. You're glad you listened. Outside your door, someone sneezes. Harsh. Real. But you don't care. You're floating now inside a golden cave of warmth and stillness. No draft, no flame, no sound. Just silence. Just syrup. You wake to laughter. Not the joyful kind. Not belly laughter or the warmth of children playing. Know this is sharp, stifled, and deliberate, the kind of laughter that lives in corners and knows better than to be loud. It dances just outside your chamber door, echoing down the hallway in hushed bursts. You rise, still wrapped in the haze of last night's syrup, and step carefully into the corridor. The laughter grows quieter as you approach, replaced by the whisper of silk slippers and words not meant for ears like yours, but you hear them anyway. Did you see her handkerchief, monogrammed in silver but crusted with? I heard he coughed during audience. Twice. 3 concubines haven't left their rooms in 2 days. The words flit like moths between the courtiers. Gossip, you know, is the second heir of the palace lighter than smoke, faster than disease. And this winter, the two move together, hand in glove. You follow the sound toward the harem wing, where the warmth of the day hasn't quite reached. There, in the gathering room, 6 women lounge beneath fur-lined throws, sipping spiced water and fanning themselves with papers that clearly aren't official documents. At the center sits a girl barely older than you, draped in pale lavender and laughing behind a fan. Her eyes sparkle with mischief and menace. You recognize her as one of the favorites, not of the Sultan necessarily, but of the whispers that shape his moods. She sees you and smiles. "Have you come to join the choir of coughs?" she says sweetly. You shake your head. Pity, she continues. It's quite the chorus lately. Even the eunuchs are clearing their throats like nervous poets. One of the other women leans in. I heard the vizier's cat has it now. Laughter. You glance toward the doorway, where an older handmaiden stands with arms crossed, unimpressed. It's not a joke, she snaps. Illness spreads faster when you mock it. The room falls briefly silent. Then someone coughs, not dramatically, just once, dry, controlled. Everyone turns. The girl in lavender narrows her eyes. Which one of you didn't drink the fig syrup? A nervous glance. A shrug. More laughter. You've never seen a place where sickness is both feared and flaunted. But here in these velvet halls, it's become theater. A power game. Who coughs and when? Who's seen leaving the physician's quarters? Who requests a heated brick? Who doesn't? Every sniffle is a statement. Later in the hallway, you find a cluster of scribes whispering about the same thing. They mention a small scroll that's been circulating an anonymous poem titled The Wheeze of Winter. Supposedly written by someone high in court, it lists each coughing official by name disguised in rhyme. The golden one hides in velvet blue, but shivers when the muezzin calls anew. It's cruel. It's clever. It's everywhere. You wonder if the physician has seen it, or worse, if he wrote it. Historians still argue whether such gossip shaped policy or merely passed time, one of the palace chroniclers once noted. But in spaces where illness was a sign of weakness, and weakness a crack in power, even a cough could be a coup. You think about that as you help carry bedding to one of the lesser prince's chambers. He doesn't look sick, but he's requested new sheets and extra incense. You knock enter and immediately smell frankincense and roasted thyme, a scent meant to cleanse. The boy doesn't speak, just gestures toward the window. He's watching the garden, where frost clings to the fig trees and smoke curls from the chimneys. You replace the bedding in silence. Before you leave, he finally speaks. Do you think they know I'm not coughing? You pause. Does it matter? He smiles faintly. Everything matters. especially what they think you're coughing about. You don't know how to respond, so you bow and slip away. That night, back in your own chamber, you reflect on the strange politics of phlegm and rumor. You drink warm mint tea and wrap yourself in your heaviest blanket, not because you feel ill, but because you know someone will ask how you slept. You cough once just softly and wonder who might be listening. The afternoon is golden and slow heavy with the scent of ink and parchment. You've been sent to the scholar's wing, a quieter corner of the palace, where even the sunlight seems to speak in whispers. Here there are no coughing fits, no bustling gossip, no slammed doors. Just books, scrolls, and the steady scrape of quills. You arrive with a tray of herbal tea, sage lemon balm, and a single drop of honey requested by one of the senior scribes. He's deep in study, hunched over a text, so old its pages flutter like dry leaves when he turns them. He barely glances up when you arrive, gesturing for you to place the tray near the window. Then, without warning, he closes his book and leans back with a long sigh. Nap time, he says. You blink. Now. He nods. Always after the second tea. You've heard of this, the scholar's nap. Not laziness, not indulgence, but ritual. A sacred pause. Ottoman intellectuals often believed that the mind did its finest work, not in waking study, but in the space just after it, that soft floating zone between alertness and sleep. That's when inspiration visits, when ideas resolve themselves, when the body breathes and the soul remembers. He pulls a thin blanket over his shoulders and reclines on a low divan beneath the window. His turban loosens, his quill hand relaxes, and soon he is asleep. You're not sure what to do, so you sit. Other scribes around the chamber are doing the same. Some are still scribbling. Others have already closed their eyes. The youngest among them leans on a pile of books like a pillow and exhales slowly content. You take this moment to wander the shelves. There are books here you've never seen, volumes of dream interpretation, philosophical treatises about sleep, even a small section dedicated entirely to sleeping positions of the wise. One drawing shows a man curled like a cat, annotated with notes about airflow, spinal health, and the benefits of left-side dreaming. You find a thin book, worn with use, titled The Breath of the Mind at Rest. Inside a passage catches your eye. To sleep in the afternoon is not to retreat from the world, but to return briefly to its deeper rhythm, the rhythm that spoke to prophets, poets, and physicians before clocks made noise of the silence. You sit back surprised by how deeply the words land. Across the room, another scribe begins to snore. It's gentle, rhythmic, a kind of punctuation to the silence. Later, when the scribe who summoned you awakes, he looks refreshed. That was good, he murmurs. A small death with no consequence. You ask if he always naps at the same hour. Only when I wish to dream clearly, he says, and only when the air is scented with rosemary. You hadn't noticed before, but yes, a faint trace of rosemary hangs in the air, perhaps burned before the nap to guide the breath. You wonder what he dreamt. He pours the tea now, no longer too hot, and hands you a cup. You should nap here sometime, he says. It teaches you things. He returns to his writing. The page now flows with ease, the pen dancing across the parchment as if the nap had unlocked something. Historians still argue whether Ottoman scholars truly believed naps were divine tools you recall from one of the medical texts, or whether they simply used rest as a shield against exhaustion masked as insight. But among those who studied the stars, the body in the soul sleep was never wasted. That night, you try it yourself. You finish your duties early, brew a pot of sage tea, scatter a few rosemary leaves near your pillow. You lie down not for sleep, just for silence, just to see. Your mind floats. Thoughts arrive unannounced, linger, then vanish. You don't dream of anything grand, no visions, no messages, but when you rise, your chest feels lighter, your hands steadier, and for the first time in weeks, the cough in your throat is gone. You catch the scent long before you see it. It drifts through the corridor like smoke, bitter rich, slightly burnt. Your steps slow. Your breath catches not from illness, but anticipation. You know this scent. Everyone in the palace does. It's banned technically, but it's here all the same. Coffee. You follow the trail to a servant's side room, tucked behind the physician's quarters. The door is ajar, and inside 2 men crouch over a brazier, gently stirring a brass sesve, the long-handled pot used for brewing. The liquid inside bubbles dark and slow. You try not to gasp aloud. They see you, and for a moment no one moves. Then the older one, a steward, whose name you don't know, gives a tiny shrug and waves you in. Only a sip, he says. You sit on a crate while he pours the drink into a tiny porcelain cup, no bigger than a thimble. The surface glistens with a thin foam. You take it in both hands and breathe in deeply. It smells like midnight, like secrets, like something sacred and slightly forbidden. You sip. It's hot and bold and nearly unpleasant, but just nearly. It grabs your tongue, then your throat, and seems to chase every trace of sleep from your lungs. You blink. Your body straightens. The scratch in your chest vanishes. One of the men chuckles. See? You set the cup down and exhale. I thought it was outlawed. It was, the steward says. Twice. They tell you the story. Coffee arrived in the Ottoman Empire in the 1500s. It's carried by traders from Yemen. It spread fast. Too fast. Coffee houses opened in Istanbul, becoming dens of conversation poetry games, and most threatening of all gossip. The authorities grew nervous. Anything that made people gather without permission, anything that made them talk too long or think too much was dangerous. So the Sultan banned it. The first time it was punished with beatings, the second time with death. But it didn't matter. People still drank. Secret cafes moved into basements and alleyways. Traders smuggled beans inside sacks of dates. Even palace officials sipped it in shadowed rooms, like this one brewing tiny pots and whispering that coffee wasn't just a pleasure, it was medicine. The physician's assistant, who'd remained silent until now, finally speaks. They said it excited the blood, he says, but that was the point. When your breath is shallow and your chest feels like a locked box, sometimes you need to stir the blood. Wake the fire again. He opens a drawer and shows you a row of bottles labeled with elegant calligraphy: rose syrup, vinegar tonic, licorice extract, and at the far end a small sack labeled Quahua coffee. Historians still argue whether coffee was more poison or cure, he continues. But here we only used it when someone had truly lost their spark. After fever, after long silence, one sip, no more. He reseals the drawer and returns to his notes. You leave soon, after the taste of coffee still on your tongue. Later that day, you hear rumors of someone caught with a bag of beans near the kitchens. He was fined, not flogged. Progress maybe, or just fatigues. That evening, you're sent to deliver a package to the harem. When you arrive, you find 3 of the concubines sitting on cushions playing a quiet game with carved dice. One of them holds a tiny cup of something dark. You glance at it. She raises an eyebrow. Medicine, she says with a wink. For the throat. You nod solemnly. They laugh. That night, you boil water quietly in the laundry hearth and pour it over crushed dates and a single coffee bean you'd hidden in your pouch. It isn't proper brewing. It isn't even good, but as you sip it, your head clears. Your breath deepens. You feel for the first time in days, not just comforted, but awake. And that perhaps is its own kind of healing. You're woken before dawn by a gentle tapping, not a knock, but the sound of fingers brushing your door like wind over fabric. When you open it, there's no one there. Just a small cloth bundle tied with red string sitting silently at your threshold. Inside, a square of deep blue velvet, stitched with golden thread, folded around something soft and lumpy. You unfurl it carefully, revealing dried herbs, bay leaves, thyme rose petals, wrapped around a tiny strip of parchment. The writing is too small to read in the low light, but you recognize the shape of the letters. Arabic, a verse, maybe a prayer, maybe a protection charm. You hold the bundle to your chest and feel its faint warmth like the last touch of a hand recently pulled away. This is a muscus and a talisman, not a toy, not a trinket. In the Ottoman world, these are objects of quiet power, often sewn into garments, tucked beneath pillows, or hung beside cradles. Each is a whisper stitched into form, part prayer, part medicine, part memory. You slip it into the pouch at your belt and walk the corridor heading toward the seamstress's wing, where you suspect it came from. Sure enough, the room is already awake with soft voices and the low hum of thread pulled through fabric. One of the older women looks up and sees you clutching the bundle. She smiles but says nothing. You thank her anyway. Cold winds and coughing mouths, she says, nodding. Best to wear blessings. You glance around the room. Hanging on pegs and folded in baskets are robes and tunics, bed linens and underclothes, all in various states of completion. But if you look closely, you notice something more: small loops of colored thread hidden in seams beads, stitched into hemlines, tiny symbols embroidered on the inside of collars where no one would ever see. They don't cure the illness, she admits, but they remind the body what it's fighting for. She hands you a scrap of linen with silver thread running along the edge. Here, she says, for your wrist, wear it until the frost is gone. You tie it on. The rest of the day feels oddly charmed. Your chores go smoothly. You avoid the usual scoldings. Even the guards' usually stern and silent nod as you pass. Maybe it's coincidence. Maybe it's the charm. Maybe the difference doesn't matter. Later in the garden, you see a group of palace children drawing symbols in the dirt with sticks. One of them explains that they're making a cough circle, a shape their nursemaid taught them, meant to trap bad air. They laugh as they draw, oblivious to how ancient their game truly is. That evening, you help prepare a room for one of the Sultan's cousins, recently returned from a border post. His belongings include a leather pouch filled with charms, tiny wooden hands, pressed coins, a small glass eye. He lays them carefully along the windowsill, each one facing the room, and whispers a prayer under his breath. You pretend not to notice. Historians still argue whether Ottoman talismans reflect medical belief or folk tradition, your physician friend once said. But the real question is who said it must be one or the other? At night before bed, you slip your muska beneath your pillow. You wrap your wrist in the silver thread linen again. You touch each with your fingers and whisper a line you barely remember learning. Let no breath break. Let no dream fray. Let this thread hold until the day. And as you settle beneath your blankets, you don't feel foolish. You feel surrounded, not just by cloth and warmth and walls, but by something older, something stitched into the bones of the palace. 1,000 whispered hopes that illness will pass gently, that the chest will stay clear, and that the body and all its stories will survive another winter night. You can't sleep, not because of pain, your chest no longer aches, not because of cold your blankets are layered just right, but because the night itself is alive, humming gently in the walls, in the creak of doors, in the shuffle of distant feet. You lie still listening. There, a sound you know well, but haven't heard in weeks. Tap, tap, tap. The rhythmic beat of a staff on stone, steady and patient. Tap, taps, taps. The watchman. You slip out of bed quietly, careful not to disturb the warmth you've built. The corridor's dark, but familiar. You know the pattern of the tiles beneath your feet. You've walked them barefoot so often this winter, they feel like part of you. You reach the corner of the hallway and peer down toward the gate. There he is, a tall figure in a fur-lined cloak lantern, in one hand walking a staff in the other. His movements are unhurried, the pace of someone who doesn't mind being forgotten. He walks the palace each night, chanting softly as he goes. His words aren't meant to rouse or warn. They're lullabies for stone and soul. You hear him now, barely above a whisper. The night is deep, the winds are cold, but no cough steals the breath I hold. Sleep, my children, sleep in peace, till morning comes and shadows cease. His chant drifts through the halls like a warm breeze. You didn't know the watchman sang, or maybe you just never noticed, not until your own breath grew quiet enough to listen. You follow at a respectful distance, past the columns and shuttered rooms, past empty water basins and flickering lamps. His path winds through the outer courtyards and into the gallery where the stained glass windows sleep like closed eyes. Every few steps he pauses, lifts his lantern, and taps his staff 3 times on the floor. A signal, ancient and simple, all is well. Still breathing, still alive. He turns into a side hallway near the scribe's chambers. You hesitate, then retreat. It's not your place to follow further. Instead, you head back to your room, footsteps lighter now. You slip beneath your blankets again and lie still, eyes open, listening for the next verse. It comes faintly farther now, but still reaching. The doors are closed, the fire is low, but warmth remains where hearts do glow. Dream no fear and breathe no dread. Let healing rest upon your head. You exhale, no tickle, no rasp, just a silence. Historians still argue whether palace night watchmen were security or symbolism, a tutor once said during a lecture. But to those who slept beneath their songs, they were guardians of breath. You close your eyes and let the chant carry you. Not into sleep exactly, but into something just beside it. A place where coughs are forgotten, where rooms hold their heat, where threads, prayers, spices, and soup have done their patient work. You sleep without dreams, without interruption. The night moves on, and your body at last lets go. And now, the story fades. The palace grows quiet again, its marble halls resting beneath the blanket of night. The watchman's song has vanished into the distance. The lanterns are low. Even the coughs have fallen still. You're warm, wrapped in linen wool and the soft hush of Ottoman winter. Your chest rises slowly, evenly. No rasp, no tickle, no ache. Everything you need has already happened. The fig syrup, the layers of spice in your shoes, the rosemary steam drifting through bathhouse tiles. They've all done their work, not because they cured you exactly, but because they reminded your body how to rest. Your body, so often pulled and pushed, hurried and bent, has nothing left to prove tonight. There is no one left to impress, just breath, just quiet. So let your limbs grow heavy, as if sinking into deep water. Let your thoughts blur at the edges, like ink on wet parchment. Let the sound of footsteps fade. No more tea to boil, no more rumors to chase. Just this moment, right here. You've made it through the cold corridors, the strange cures, the gossip-laced whispers of a palace trying to stay well. And now you're here, whole, warm, safe. Let your shoulders drop. Let your hands go still. And if any thoughts return softly, kindly, thank them for visiting, and let them drift on like smoke from the last ember of the brazier. There's no need to chase anything now. Not sleep, not healing, not history. It's already here. All that remains is the deep quiet of the night. End of script. Sweet dreams.